Hello and welcome back to another episode of For Azeroth. I am really sorry I was distracted by Lex's dance there. I didn't know exactly what was going on. But we are back with Lex. Lex, how are you and how's the World of Warcraft been treating you?
Manny, I do that dance every single time you do the countdown.
What?
If you're curious, by the way, you can always come to the Discord at bit.ly/fastdiscord, and then you can see our podcast live, which means that you can see me do a little dance every time Manny does the countdown. Hello! World of Warcraft is treating me very well. Live is great. We got Salhadar down, so we're finally working on Dimensius and Heroic, which is very exciting. And we've more or less decided that we're going to keep pushing a prog and not reset for it, either until we get really sick of it or we get AOTC, which is very exciting and very fun. Alpha, I'm having mixed feelings about, but we'll talk about that later.
Okay. And then coming from the other side of this triumvirate, we have Sean. Hello, Sean. And how's the World of Warcraft been treating you?
Warcraft's been treating me well. We are also working on Dimensius. We're Mythic as opposed to Heroic. So that's exciting. Lex and I progging the same boss at the same time.
We're basically same level of player.
Essentially, yeah. We are. You're like the... I was going to say shorter, but I actually don't know if you are shorter. But you're like the American version of me, and I'm the Canadian version.
Wait, how tall are you?
I am... Well, my ID says 5'10", but I think I'm closer to 5'9".
Okay, yeah, you're taller than me, but only a little.
Yeah, okay. All right, so yeah, the shorter version of me. But I have been enjoying Alpha, unlike Lex, so I guess we will talk about that later. And, yeah.
Okay.
Also, Lex mentioned that you can come to the Discord to watch the live recordings of the shows, which you can, but as of this episode, which you might already know if you're already doing what I'm about to say you can do, you can see the full episodes on YouTube again. We're putting them back. I did a deep dive on our YouTube comments. Some of y'all need Jesus. But some of you missed us. So we're coming back to YouTube as of episode 353.
There you go. And then on top of that, if you are following along with everything we're doing, we are currently giving away 2 copies of the Dreadlord Regalia. So if you want to enter that contest, you can do so over on Twitter or a new Instagram that we've started up. So yeah, Faz everywhere you want it. With that said, let's get into the news. So the big news this season is, well, actually, we're going to be talking about Legion Remix, but I'm questioning. As soon as I said that, I'm questioning if that's the big news. But it is the big release on retail right now. We have Legion Remix has gone live. And that means that you can go back to the Broken Isles. You can play through the initial starting part of Legion, or if you are part of like the amazingly dedicated, you might already have a level 80. So for those who are wondering, Legion Remix this time is phased. There are multiple phases. This phase is the Skies of Fire that comes with the launch. And that, of course, is your leveling up along the Broken Isles, the Emerald Nightmare raid, and the Trial of Valor raid. So there's a lot to do initially. Sean, have you been playing Remix?
No.
You had said this. I kind of had suspicions. You had said that this was not the remix that was like appealing to you. You have already played this content, if I recall, unlike Mr. Pandaria Remix?
Sort of, yeah. I didn't play it when it was current. When I rejoined Azeroth, I went back and played through all of the Legion story, and I have done, I want to say 3 of the class halls, maybe 4 of the class halls. Death Knight, Paladin, Druid, Warrior. I feel like Demon Hunter, so maybe 5 of the class halls. I'm not going to say what I was going to say. I'm really glad that people are super excited for Legion Remix and that people really love the Legion stories and that they get a chance to play them again in this mode. I don't know if it's because of when it came out and what else is going on around it. When we had Mop Remix, it was in the middle of season 4. The raiding season was over. We did have War Within Alpha and Beta, but it's not sparking joy.
It is definitely not happening during a season 4 where like you were checked out of basically retail. And yes, it's happening at the same time as the alpha. There's a lot of news happening for everybody, and then there's a lot of people things that people want to play for those who happen to have access. But for the quote unquote normies, as people have said in our chat, did we ever come up with a name? Are we going with like Faz fans? I don't know.
We're still workshopping.
We're still workshopping it. All right. Well,
yeah.
We'll need people to come into the Discord to give us names. With Legion Remix, the big thing is, of course, the artifact weapons. For me, I've played through every campaign other than Druid and Mage.
Already?
Not already. I mean, like, in the past. So, like, the reason that I would play them this time is for those two, to experience those. But I think that, yeah, it is a little bit like I've been here before, and to play those campaigns, I could do that at any time. So the main appeal for this, in my eyes, is all of the cosmetics and all of the things that you may have missed the first time around. And that's the big thing about these remakes, that hyper fast experience that allows you to do all of these collections. But the other half of it was like that amazing power that you could build, the power of fantasy that you could destroy entire raids by your lonesome. And there's a question about that in this new version, Lemix, if you will, because how quickly you get power was a question. They sped it up in PTR testing. Originally it was slower. They sped it up. There is infinite power within the weapons, but on top of that, we've got this phased progression. So even if you spend as much time as you can in this initial part, the maximum item level that you can get for your weapon has been capped, and that is supposedly the same for all of your items. That is 633. That's still pretty impressive in my mind, but I don't know what that works out to relative to current retail. The amount of bronze that you get is now purely cosmetic. You're not splitting that between power gains and the goodies that you want to buy. And of course, this is Legion, so there we've got analogs to a bunch of the stuff that were in Legion. So instead of artifact power, you've got the infinite power. Instead of artifact knowledge, you've got, yeah, you guessed it, infinite knowledge. Seems like a quasi return of form for people who knew about it, but for people who are like just getting to know Legion or having their first taste with this is going to be a little bit more complicated than Mist of Pandaria Remix. So, Lex, if you had all the time in the world, would you be diving into this? Are you going to dive into this?
I don't think so. I guess I have kind of... So first of all, I did actually play through Legion. That was basically right when I came back to World of Warcraft, so I have played through that. So the story isn't like something that I need to experience firsthand, the way that in Pandaria I never really played it. I didn't love Pandaria Remix because it did feel like I didn't like no life it early on, and that meant that kind of all the content was just boring. Like if I did a raid, it was just me standing in the corner twiddling my thumbs and pressing a button occasionally. So I guess I don't dislike the changes and the kind of capping things and keeping it controlled, but I guess that also makes me wonder what the point is, right? Because like you said, Manny, you can play all of this at any other time. So time walking, it feels like the benefit of like the joy of time walking, the draw of time walking is if you push really hard, you can just plow through everything. And if that's not true, then this is just, I guess it's collectibles, right? It's just to get appearances and cool little things, which is valid, but not, it's something that I enjoy having on the side, but I'm not going to dedicate time just to collecting. That's why I'm a world first raider, right, Sean?
Nailed it. Yeah, I'm with Lex big time. I actually, if I didn't have to make a character and level it, the chances of me engaging with this content go up by like 1,000. I would definitely dip in and check it out. Even if I could just take one of my level 80s that's already leveled and just dip it in and have it convert to remix. To get the collectibles and stuff like that. I don't know. There's a lot of good transmog in Legion, so I might want to go in and get that anyway, but I don't need more alts. I don't even want all the alts that I have. I deleted all of my Mop Remix characters as soon as Mop Remix ended. Like, I aggressively deleted them. Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, for me, it was getting those collectibles for sure. I did not delete my my Mop Remix characters. I only played one, and it was my chance to level a mage, because mage was the last class that I had not actually leveled anywhere near to cap. So that was the opportunity. Obviously, I've got Evokers near cap. There is no new class that's come out since Evokers, so I don't have any of those. So the question becomes like, okay, what exactly am I after? And you're right. If I could not level, then I would probably do this. But then if I'm not leveling through this, I'm really just better off going back to current Legion, where I'm over level, over geared, and just smashing everything myself, without this like strange little system to get. So now I'm worried that it's a matter of FOMO. Are the cosmetics, are those like chance items so great that like that's going to push me to playing? And in which case, am I waiting for the last phase where they're going to offer all these catch-up stuff just to quickly go through it and be like, okay, great, let me get as much bronze as, like, there's literally spreadsheets out there that tell you, what do you want to buy? This is how much bronze you need. This was something that came up in Mist of Pandaria before. And I think that's the case that I'm most likely going to do. I'm going to speak to, like, some of the great people that are out there. Bega is a great resource for this, and be like, Bega, help me out here. Give me the spreadsheet. Can you help me get through this sort of stuff? And I remember last time, Sean, you were part of that group of pumpers that like to like take people along and clear through all the raids. And I think that's where my play is going to be, just getting like carried along by Sean, hoping that the gator doesn't like bite down as I'm picking out the bronze from between his teeth.
Yeah. I do want to say, though, because you mentioned that you can go through and do the class hall campaigns at any time for any of those classes you're missing on retail, but you're incentivized to do it during Le Mix, because they get rid of all the needless bullcrap, like the wait 3 days for this mission table, and that's all gone, I'm told. So if you want to actually do it efficiently, you need to do it now. Otherwise, you get stuck behind all these ridiculous time gates. I don't know. We'll see. If I can jump in and just grind dungeons, maybe that's a day on stream to 80 and then get my bronze to buy my stuff. Who knows? We'll see. But there's lots more going on right now. I got to get I got get these new bear forms that remix. I just got them. All I had to do was log in once. It was great. Thanks, Blizz. I put as much effort into that as I imagine most of the people who got Mage Tower appearances in the late Legion did. And I will use much less pearl clutching about my gathering of those appearances than those people do.
Well, Sean, I got some bad news, which I feel like you're leading us into. One of a few bugs that showed up with Legion is that every druid suddenly unlocked. Well, not every druid. A lot of druids, and I haven't met a druid that hasn't. Has suddenly unlocked bear form, werebear form, and the other Mage Tower form for Feral, the Sparkle Kitty form, without having to do anything, just logging in. And Blizzard has noted that this is a bug, an unintentional interaction, and that they are working on fixing it. And when they do fix it, the people who didn't earn it the way that was prescribed, they're going to lose it again. And
there's a dev somewhere at Blizzard, like with tears streaming down their eyes, like they said they wanted this.
They definitely said multiple times that Mage Tower appearances were not going to be part of Legion Remix. So the fact that they showed up just randomly, nobody was convincing anybody that this was intended. Unfortunately, there will, of course, be belly aching when they take it away, because people are like, you like stuff, and free stuff can't beat that price. There will be a lot of belly aching when they fix this. That said, that wasn't the only bug. We've seen a number of reports of people having a lot of difficulty in the starting areas for Europe, as well as some other various issues. I think it's weird that the starting area for Europe was damaged, but like NA didn't seem to have the same level of difficulty. From what the reports that I've been getting, because like when I was playing like retail last night, because I wasn't playing Remix, I was not hearing a lot of belly aching from my like guildies that were across over on Remix playing. So I guess something got transferred wrong over to the EU servers after NA bug tested?
Yeah, it wasn't just so. I mean, EU had those problems today, but NA had problems last night. The Legion launch had problems. Obviously, you had the Werebear stuff. There was issues in Remix itself, but the retail servers, yesterday's 11.2.5 patch, did something to mangle the retail servers. People were unable to hearth. They were unable to leave dungeons. They were unable to log into the game. They were unable to exit the game, and all of this was still occurring as of 4.5 hours ago. If you put in for crafted items, it was upgrading your crafted item to the next item level, but you were losing the item level on your overall item level. So instead of going up 10, you were dropping 10. It was deleting your main stat gains. And then if you left the zone, if you left Dornegal, they would come back, but if you went back to Dornegal, they would go away again. And then in some dungeons, they were also phasing in and out. And I mean, they're working on all of that to get all of that rectified, but yesterday was, to quote Taliesin and Evitel, a shit show.
Yeah. Which is scary, not to be a little bit of a broken record, but it's scary on a 0.5 patch. Like those, if I heard about that degree of bugs on an expansion release, I would be like, that's a little extreme. I would have thought they'd have that a little bit more streamlined. It's a little stressful that's occurring now. But I mean, I suppose you can also say, if you want to be optimistic, that they're getting all the bad stuff out now, and so when Midnight comes out, it's going to be beautiful.
I don't think that's how game dev works, but okay. I'll join your optimism train.
I will not be drinking the copium. I will believe it when I see it. But you know what? I guess the upside of this is that it is happening at the later part of a season where most people are winding down their plays. So a disruption now is affecting less people than a disruption at the very beginning of an expansion when everybody's trying to jump in. With that said, I hope that people who are up for it enjoy Legion Remix. I hope that when I eventually take the dive, that it becomes a much more rewarding experience than I'm currently worried it will be. And let's move on from there. Before we jump in, though, I would like to thank everyone over at Patreon that is supporting the show. Our show will always be free, but if you find value in what we do, please consider supporting us over at patreon.com/FAZ.
Wait a second. That was my job. 3 episodes in a row. What happened? Did you not like the way that I was thanking the patrons, man?
I recall you saying he's never giving it to me again.
I don't remember that.
Oh, I'll find the sound clip. Anyways, we go from one controversy to another. Sean, can you talk to us about the add-on anarchy?
Yeah, so we saw Alpha launched to the world last week, and with that release, we finally got our first glimpse at the level of access we'll have for add-ons. We have some lovely show notes here. I'm actually just going to read right from the show notes. So Blizzard had reached out prior to this to several add-on authors and gave them details of the changes to the API that was going to be present for testing and that would be implemented with the release of the Midnight expansion. One of the things that Ian Hazzikostas said is that the UI and add-ons, they're just putting everything combat related into a box. The UI and add-ons can know that that box exists. They can display information about the box, but what they can't do is know definitively what's inside the box or run any kind of logic based on it. What does this mean? Well, it means you can color everything in that box if you want, but it's all the same color. So now I'll use nameplates as the example. You can color all nameplates yellow, but you can no longer color individual nameplates of specific mobs because the NPC ID exists in that box. So you lose some of that granularity that we have. We do see the initial gut reaction from the community was horror, abject horror. And we also found out in that same time that this was going live with the launch of Midnight. So we had talked about that we had heard rumors that there was potential that we were going to lose access to these combat add-ons with the launch of Midnight, despite going fundamentally directly opposite what Ian Hazzikostas said in an interview, where he said is that they just to be super clear, I think we see the taking away part, the restricting functionalities as the end of this long road. I think we want to make it very clear that we're not sitting here being like, all right, we want you to play the game the way we intended, and we're going to take away your tools. We just want to bridge that gap. To quote Maury Povich, that was a lie. Now, Manny's going to correct me and say it's not necessarily a lie, that the design decisions may have changed along the route from the time that he gave that interview 5 months ago to today where we give this information. But I'm the hyperbolic one, so we're going to go with what I said. So basically, we lost access to everything all at once. Weakor has called it quits. They said we can't function under this. In order to change the way that this add-on works, we would have to fundamentally rewrite it from the ground up and lose so much functionality, so we're just not going to. And then they gave 3 conditions under which, if any of these 3 were met, that they would consider continuing add-on support for Midnight. And then Bigwigs came out and said, well, we're going to see what we can do. Bigwigs is able to replicate their own combat timeline, like the Blizzard in-game timeline. However, they're not allowed to change the names of any of the spells, and they're not allowed to change what spells are displayed. If you go and look at the actual Blizzard timelines, they display a ridiculous amount of spells, to the point that it almost feels like they're just intentionally trying to overwhelm you with how much information they're giving you so that none of it is valuable, and you can't remove any of it with add-ons like Bigwigs and DBM. So it was community panic. There was a lot of comments about accessibility, which I do want to get into, but I want to give you guys a chance to talk before we get into accessibility. But I do have some quotes on that from a very well-written article by the Undaunted Guild. I'm just looking for them here. So we'll talk about accessibility in a second. But ultimately it was people basically hardcore dooming over the edge of all add-ons are gone. Blizzard can't possibly replicate these thousands of hours of development time that these devs have done. What are we going to do? Does that about sum it up?
Yeah. And I do want to say that, like, the way that they have restricted is that initially any add-on in an instance that tried to use the add-on comms channel or was trying to interact with the chat was restricted, just blocked. That meant that even things that you might not consider too dangerous was being affected. Things like loot council. After you've killed a boss, you're like, okay, let's hand the loot out to people. Nope, blocked. You're in an instance, can't work. Something simple as sending a pull timer if you didn't want to use Blizzard's pull timer. Nope. It requires communication to get that countdown in sync with everybody. Guess you can't do that anymore, and you have to use Blizzard's one. This was heavy-handed. Yes, limited to just instances, but just heavy-handed. And without getting into the accessibility part of this, Blizzard did come back very quickly and say, okay, we're going to adjust it so that it only does this new logic behavior, this new restriction, while you're actively in combat. So now you can do a pull timer or a break timer or loot cancel because you're not actively fighting something. Assuming somebody doesn't start trying to pull while your loot cancel's going. Still a restriction. Anyways, so like they're trying to walk it back.
That means you can't clear trash while sorting out the loot from your boss.
Exactly.
An essential time saver in every raid.
Exactly. So it's still not a perfect solution. And in fact, the author of one of the add-ons said, I think they went with the nuclear option as a bargaining tactic to say that, like, hey, we're going to destroy everything, and maybe if you beg and plead, we'll give you something, which isn't a good faith argument. You're applying intent and you're immediately going for like the worst thing, but is a fear that has been expressed, and so I guess I report it. What do you think, Lex?
Well, first of all, I think that is ascribing malice to what is probably, I think the word in the quote is stupidity, but I'll be nice to Blizzard. I think they're just flying by the seat of their pants, man. That's what I've been feeling for all of this. I feel like they're just making decisions on the fly and are not having the time to think things through. This one is particularly frustrating to me, though, because, and I'm about to do the same thing and ascribe malice to it, it feels like they keep lying to us. I've always been the one who is a little bit more on the side of like, I mean, they're going to have to turn them off for people to use them. Like, I understand why that's a thing they're going to, like, that's a call they might make. That, you know, ultimately, if they want these add-ons to not exist, there's no world, like, they really can't have them exist and not exist at the same time, and then they're going to have to make that call. I've also always been the one on the show, not always, but back when Blizzard was, like, really doing what the player base said, I was the one who was like, occasionally Blizzard needs to be comfortable just making an unpopular call and just saying, I know you guys don't think you're going to like it, you got to give it a try, though. Like, we have to make this decision. But they have to stand behind that, because this part of why this feels so bad is because we're getting all of these weird mixed messages, because we're hearing, don't worry, it's going to be a long road. It's not a big deal. We're going to, you know, try things and test things. We're not just going to turn off add-ons. And then they just turn off add-ons. And we're being told we're going to work closely with the add-on developers. We're going to get all of this information. We're going to make sure that everything is exactly, you know, we're talking to the people who've worked on this. From what I've heard, that perhaps did not exist. And now, you know, it was a little bit of a joke that in a Q&A, Ian, I believe, specifically said the words, "We are not killing Uyghurs." And the next day, Uyghurs announces that they're closing forever. So I would be on Blizzard's side if they just came out and they were like, listen, we understand that you guys, and I want to put a little pin in this. I do think the accessibility is something that I can't personally speak to. That's an entirely different conversation. And I think that is really, really critical. So this is all my feelings as an able-bodied, neurotypical, probably, person. So I understand there's a lot of experiences that I personally can't speak to. And that is significantly more important than, like, you know, just the general vibes. But so I suppose what I should say is it would be one thing if Blizzard said, listen, you guys, this is the only way that realistically we can move forward with the plans we're having. We can't build encounters for our own UI if you guys are using Uyghurs. We can't trust that we can work on this if we're not actually seeing it. We can't test, right? We can't actually see if an encounter is too easy or too hard if half of you guys are still pulling out Uyghurs. So we have to make a call, and we've decided to make that call at midnight. If they just said that, I would have significantly more respect for them than what they're doing now, where they're clearly aware that we're going to get really mad when they say that. And so they're just not telling us and waiting for us to figure out and then getting mad later. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So I did hear that quote when it happened. They're using this as a bargaining tactic. I also like that. I don't think it's a bargaining tactic. I do think it is somewhere in the middle, like where Lex said, where they were just like, we need to remove everything because we can't do this otherwise. And they are going to slowly give pieces back, which we've seen them do. It was less than 2 days, and they had already made some leniency and giving back the outside. We're gonna pull timers back in, loot council, stuff like that, outside of combat while you're in an instance. And they are, like, if you look at the patch notes today for alpha that came out that we're going to talk about in a bit, there are more changes coming. Nothing that affects weak auras or bigwigs or LVY or any of those add-ons, but there is another note that says, hey, next week with the phase 3 alpha build, there will be more changes, and that's good. But I do want to speak specifically to the accessibility piece, because I think that is the part, and as well, like Lex, I can't speak personally, but there is a very well-written article on Reddit, which that's the first time I've ever said those words, that connection. I'm not typically a Reddit person, but this was sent to me by a fan of the show, a friend of the show, a Faz head, if you will. We're just shooting things out there, see what hits. But in that, it was from the Undaunted Guild. And they are a entirely deaf guild, and I think deaf and hard of hearing, I think is the terming that they use. In Warcraft, there was a whole feature done by them, by the Warcraft team itself. And they rated a pretty high level. They rated a mythic level. And they use weak auras and add-ons extensively so that their raiders can play. And it's not just them, it's people with colorblind issues. So yes, there is a colorblind option in Warcraft, but it's for one specific type of colorblindness. And spoiler alert, there's way more than one type of colorblindness. Visually impaired people play the game, all these things. They use all these different add-ons for different reasons. And we have, with the current restrictions as is, all of their capability to play is gone. They will just not be able to play the game. People who've been playing the game for 21 years, who've been playing since the very first alpha, will just now not be able to play the game in the way that they play it currently. And the part that really scares me is it feels like they're just going to be collateral damage so that we don't have a Fractalus boss next expansion. And I want to read one of the quotes there, because I saw recently on Twitter, people were accusing add-on developers of using that accessibility card for the benefit of their add-on, and also where some people are mistaking, the calls for the need for accessibility features as in saying, oh, we're just making the game easier. And so this quote is from Terry Smith, who goes by, I'm going to try to pronounce their character name, but I'm probably going to butcher it. So if you ever hear this, I apologize. Diazrael or Tyazrael. And the quote is that there's a dangerous misunderstanding spreading through parts of the community and design philosophy right now that accessibility means making things simple. And that isn't true. Accessibility means options, visibility, and tools that empower players to engage at the same depth as everyone else. Simplification removes challenge. Accessibility preserves challenge and gives players the means to reach it. And here's my biggest fear, is that community of players, that entire swath of people who play this game as their only outlet, who play it because it's where all of their friends are, who play it because it's how they cope and how they deal with things, who've been playing it for 20 years, who've been playing it for 10 years, who've been playing it for 2 years. This game that was built on and thrived because of its ability for the community to build accessibility options is going to lose that potentially forever, and the harm that will do, that really, really scares me. And I adore Blizzard, and I do think that they can get their tools, their cooldown manager, their nameplates, their boss timer warnings to a state that will be good enough for abled players. I don't know if I'm using these terms wrong. Disabled community, I swear to you, I do not mean to be. I'm trying to be inclusive. But I honestly, truly do not believe that the Blizzard team is big enough or has the experience to build these tools for these people who need them in these super niche areas where they need them, and we're turning off the ability for the community to build them for them. I'm so scared that that's going to happen. I would rather fight 100 Fractalus bosses than lose that.
And by definition, even if Blizzard, which I agree with you, Sean, I don't think they have the resources, and I don't want them to be dedicating resources to that degree of razor, a decision making, right? That's the benefit of add-ons, is that somebody can sit down and they can think, what are all of the individual possible, if you guys go into weak auras, the options you have are huge, right? I want that to be an add-on developer. I don't want that to be a game developer who has a million other things on their plate. But one thing we've seen consistently is when Blizzard does bring in accessibility, there's a lag time. I had a friend who really struggled with dragon riding, and it made the first, I think it was at least the first full patch, if not the first 2 patches, of Dragonflight really bad for them. And yeah, eventually they got the option to turn on static flight, although they did point out that they had to work for it. Whereas, I, as somebody who's comfortable with dragon riding, was flying through the air day one. But it did mean that they had a rough time. And if that had, that was when we had a dragon riding raid boss, and that was really challenging. And we ended up doing, got guildies who could fly them. But if that hadn't been an option, or like when that wasn't an option, it was just bad. And it just made the game really tough and just feel terrible. Like, even if something isn't in the moment affecting you, knowing this game has this like looming thing that you just can't do, that sucks. That just feels bad. And yeah, I agree. I everything else, I would rather have crappy encounters that I have to do weak auras for than kick people out of World of Warcraft, right? I don't think that my desire to play the game in a certain way means that other people shouldn't be able to access it.
I think the hardest conversation to have is where the difference can be made. It is obviously not something that I would prescribe to anybody at Blizzard, that they would rather never have a Fractalist encounter again and say that we don't care about Undaunted. I don't think that's a position that anybody is ascribing. And so the conversation becomes, what are the things that provide accessibility while not creating computational powers that have created this issue that Blizzard has been fighting against? There is the change that they did where they're like, okay, we're going to make something have a private aura, and then people created macros around private auras. There was a conversation about when they design all of these changes, if they were going to then change the game, change classes, change a number of other things so that people didn't require the things that were in there. And in that conversation lies the like, okay, well, if you're changing the ability for add-ons not to have this, how are you then making it something that is not ableist, I guess, in design? Having design that is not ableist. And you're right, there are so many things that are hard for people to handle if they don't have the same functionality of sight that I do, or the same functionality of movement or hearing, and so many other things. And you're right, that is a lot for Blizzard to take on. My question, and I don't think that there is any right answer, my question becomes, if there is no perfect solution, is it not worth pursuing at all? And I pause there. It's like, okay, is it more harm one way or the other? Can I really say that if Sean doesn't get to play at all because it creates a impassable barrier, is that one person locked off worth what they're trying to do? And at a certain point, they do have to make that decision, right? There is points where you design a game and it has the reaction speed that is not possible for particular players, not even including like people with like visible ability changes, right? There are times where you design something and it doesn't even include situational disabilities, which are a thing. And I know there was like a big issue about this last year, but let's say I'm the sole caretaker of a little kid and I can't take 30 minutes to push through a Mythic Plus. Wouldn't it be great if Mythic Plus had a pause timer? But if Mythic Plus has a pause timer, can that be abused? And if I argue for it and somebody argues against it, are they being ableist? So like it's a very fraught conversation, and so the only thing I would sum this up with is make sure that you're not jumping to a conclusion on people's abilities or their point of view, and have an honest conversation about like what is reasonable accommodation and what is too much a cost to make it easier, or sorry, not easier, to make it more open for developers to design different encounters.
And we did have this conversation a little bit with the one button rotation, and I am on your side. Like, by definition, a game, especially a game this complex, is going to be inaccessible to some people, right? There's just no, everything is going to be inaccessible. Like, I have yet to see a perfectly accessible thing. It doesn't exist, just because of how many disabilities there are with so many competing needs. I think my biggest thing here is like, yes, choices are going to have to be made. I think they're not talking to people who they need to be talking to. I think they're moving way too fast. And I think choosing to do it in a time when their devs are so spread thin, simply because developing a new expansion is a huge undertaking and they're putting so many different things in. I think this was a time that they just cannot do it respectfully. They simply, yes, like they're going to have to weigh these. They're going to have to think it through. They're going to have to try to figure out exactly what works and what doesn't. But I think that this is the worst possible time to do it and the worst possible way. Because again, if they had just said 5 months ago, hey guys, we're going to turn off add-ons in midnights. I did it again, my damn Swifty self. We're going to turn off add-ons in midnight. We would be able to, this conversation could have been had at a time that they could be doing more testing. They could be pulling in guilds and people who are affected by this and having those conversations with them. Putting it out now means that we're all kind of hamstrung, right? Because there are other things they're going to have to fix. There are other things that, you know, we need, I don't want them to exclusively make Midnight about the UI updates. And so I think that they're doing this poorly. I think in an attempt to not, or either because things are coming out so quickly and they're not thinking them through, or because they're trying not to upset us by kind of keeping a couple things under wraps. I don't know which one it is. I think that they're making mistakes. And I think that this was something that should have been a mid-patch decision, not a new expansion decision.
Yeah. I mean, the conversation that they were saying, like they were considering it back and forth, I don't think this was a clean decision. I don't think the team was unanimous about this. And I think that this was a going back and forth conversation, and that's why it switched part way through. But this is the reality that they've created. They're going to have to own it. We've already seen that there has been some successful pushback, and I hope that they are definitely having some intense conversations and looking at how things are coming. But again, do look back at our earlier episodes, because I think we discussed this in great detail there with a number of different points that we haven't brought up on this. But that's the big fallout from phase 1. From there, we move into phase 2, and phase 2 is going live today as of this recording. Looks like that we're going to be going into Zul'Aman, and that means that the level cap is raising from 83 up to 88. That means we have 2 new dungeons, the Den of Nalarak, the Mycera Caverns. We've got Delves for Lex and all you Delve enjoyers, which I might be one of suddenly. We've got Twilight Crypts, Atalaman, that are going to be open for testing. For a special thing that wasn't actually on the list, there is a raid test for the March of Quel'Danas. The first boss, Beleren, Child of Alar, is going to be
that was there last week as well.
I thought that was in the pre-test, but not in week 1.
I did notice that you could talk to the guy. Yeah. I was too scared to do it, but you could. it was always possible for you to talk to them, and
Got
I don't
it.
know what happens.
Yeah.
I didn't. Do it.
Okay.
You can actually talk to him. He scales you up to level 90, and then when you leave, you stay level 90 and keep all your talent points.
Oh, I
So if you want to test yourself at max level without doing any of the leveling, I don't know if that bug still exists in this build, but it existed last week.
got it. But just so you know, after this week, this test is going to be removed. But it'll be back, of course, when they're doing other testing. But this should allow them to test out some of these things, like the boss timeline, the encounter warnings, and various things in there. So, you know, if you can get together a group to test this, please do so, at least for the UI stuff as well. There are some further class changes. So right off the heels of the massive sweeping changes that we saw with Alpha Phase 1, many classes, but not all, have received further changes. Some of this is putting in functionality that wasn't quite able to make Phase 1. Some of it is some adjustments that should make what was put in Phase 1 a little bit different, further iterations there. But do check out those patch notes to go through those. We don't want to dive into everything here because, again, they are big stuff in that. One of the changes that they have made that is, again, iterative is that class sets and raid weapons and all of that will now change their appearance after they've reached the full upgrade track. Last week, there had been a conversation about the fact that the upgrade would not change the appearance at all. And many people were saying, well, this meant that they were locked out of those mythic-only appearances unless you rated mythic. Blizzard has said that, okay, we understand the passion and the want of people to do this, but we want it to be more clear. So now when you fully upgrade an item, it will switch to that new appearance. And that means it's a little bit more work for some people, but it does, I think this change does feel kind of natural in my mind, that it's like, oh, you've reached the top level of this ability, and now you get the new look. The last thing, something that I would normally skip on show notes, but is quite important, especially given the conversations we've been having, is that there have been improvements on nameplates, cooldown manager, text-to-speech, and add-on security, so that the API is now a little bit different than it was on week 1, and that the stuff that is base to the game that they're trying to use to quote unquote bridge that gap, it has been reiterated on, and that is great that they're iterating it on that fast. They need to keep doing this, especially with the trajectory they're on. And then, of course, last but not least, a little bit of data mining that I think is really cool. Mr. GM pointed out that crests are being updated with names that match the gear that they're intended for. So if you want to update a veteran piece of gear, you're going to get veteran crests with whatever special name it happens to have, Void Crest or Holy Crest or whatever. If you want to get mythic gear upgraded, well, mythic crests are there for that. And I think that is the way it should have been. Specifically on this show, when we had a chance to talk with Ian, one of the few questions that I got through was, this seems strange that you're using this nomenclature. When you change it, aren't you going to have to redo the names and confuse people? Well, a couple of years later, and I get to rub that question in Ian's face. Anyways, I'll be smug about that. Count that as my win. I'm going to pass this off to a much more humble person. Sean, what do you think?
I love it. I'm excited. Prop Paladin Avengers Shield now generates holy power again. Let's effing go! I was obviously a little bit down on the add-on stuff there earlier on, but I have to say, last week in Alpha, and I assume that's going to carry on through this week, but the last week in Alpha was the most fun I've had in Warcraft since, I don't know, Ny'alotha. It just like, I started the game of vanilla. I fell in love with Warcraft in the Burning Crusade when I made my first Prop Paladin, my first Blood Off, and I went to the Eversong Woods, or Eversong Forest, and Blizzard has brought me back, and the team has done such an amazing job. The zone is crafted with such care and such attention to detail, and it's beautiful. And the stories and the quests are touching, and I love them. And the transmog is beautiful, and the adjustments they've made to the classes and the specs feel nice. I can see their vision, which is, I think, more important right now than anything else, is being able to see that vision that they say they have this week. And I love it. I can't wait to dive in. As soon as we end this episode, I'm going to go hit some target dummies on the new prop paladin, because it's just rocking. It's just been so good. And I am, like you said, I'm glad to see them making those changes. We're going to get a new alpha build every week as we get through the 5 phases, and then we'll probably roll into beta. So I imagine it's 5 weeks of alpha, then beta. It is so important that Blizzard be agile in these 5 weeks, whether that's with the nameplates, which still need some work, the cooldown manager, which still needs some work, or just the general class talents and balancing, and they're making changes. Like, it's great to see. They say they're listening to us, and you can see that they are, because Shaman was basically stripped to the bone. Resto Shamans were given Riptide and a stick of gum, and that was all they had. And the Shamans were upset. They wanted more, and they got their Cloudburst totem back. So yeah, Blizzard is doing good things in that regard. We just need them to follow suit with the add-ons. And if at the end of this journey we get to midnight and add-ons are like basically back to where they were, but they found some way to remove that computational aspect, but we can still do all of the visual changes that we need and want to do, I'll be really happy. But I'm also going to be a little bit pissed off that they put everybody through all of the stress up to that point. But we'll be happy. But I just will be like, why would you make so many worry for so long if the end goal was to just get us back to this point? But we'll figure it out. We're going to get there together. The alpha looks great. Hopefully you get access. Don't wait for your emails. Check your BNet launcher. I still haven't gotten my email to say that I'm in, and I'm in. So please check your BNet launchers. Get in there and test these dungeons with me. You can avoid the delves. They feel very much like the delves this tier. Sorry, I snuck that in.
We will have to have a conversation about delves in the next episode. But let's give Lex the final say. Lex, what are you liking about alpha so far, and what are you looking forward to in phase 2?
Don't give me the final say, Manny.
Okay, I'll follow up after you.
Love that. So, me personally, I'm throwing a little bit of a tantrum. I don't love the Havoc changes. It doesn't feel super great to me personally. I don't know. I honestly haven't really seen what other people are saying about it, so I don't know how other people are feeling about it. I didn't expect that losing Sigil was going to make me feel so sad. I thought that I was really excited when I saw that, but it's turned the rotation so like limited that it bores me, honestly. Which is so silly. It's like 1 or 2 buttons that they took away that I was pressing. But that 1 or 2 button hit me a little harder than I expected. Again, I'm throwing a tantrum. I really do not like that meta does not reset I-beams. I would not have pegged that as something that was going to like change how much I enjoy Havoc. But I would much prefer that they'd nerfed everything. Like if that was the issue, that it was too powerful, I'd much prefer that meta just kind of dropped down a little bit. Because having that burn of like first of all, the fact that I don't have to think about it, and I could just blow meta the second I see it, and I don't feel like, oh, what are my I-beams at? Do I have to hold I-beams so I can do meta? I don't like that. I think it actually made it more complicated when the point was to simplify. And also, like, they're just when you jump into meta and you have your rotation immediately when you pop it down, and you're just like go 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 go. That feels so good, and losing that has just felt bad. And the consolation prize is supposed to be Devourer, but I have not played ranged DPS kind of ever, so I didn't realize how hard it is to do solo. I've been talking such a big game about how I'm like, oh yeah, delves aren't that bad. I know it's a little different for different classes, but solo play and I'm doing it totally fine. And now I'm trying to do it as a ranged DPS, and I am just not enjoying it. And I talked to my ranged friends, and they did say that it gets better as you get further on. I'm relatively low geared even for alpha. But that ranged is harder to do solo, which makes sense, right? And so that's been a little sad, because that was the thing that I was really excited about. And I think I might still I want to test it in dungeons. And I might raid on it, but I don't really see myself gearing on dev just because I am having such a tough time moving from tanky melee to not tanky ranged.
Okay.
Lex, I have a solution for Lex before Manny takes the last word. What if I told you I could make you tanky and give you back Sigil of Flame?
You want me to do Vengeance?
Yeah, play
Yeah,
Vengeance.
that's also why I know that I'm being such a whiny little baby about the like eyes not resetting or meta not resetting anything, because that's true of every other demon hunter. Like that is a Havoc only sort of thing. Yeah, and I should. I tanked most of our all of our heroic raid on Monday, so it was a reclear. It wasn't anything important. It wasn't anything important. It was just a reclear. And I did wipe us a couple of times. Well, I wiped us once, but I really do enjoy tanking. I need to learn Vengeance a little bit more. And I mean, like, also, like I said, I'm throwing a tantrum. These are both things that if Havoc had never had them, I wouldn't be sitting there like, oh, it sucks that when I go into meta, it doesn't reset everything, right? So I'll get over it. It's gonna be fine. It has just been a little bit sad to be like, have gone into Midnight so excited about what Demon Hunter is looking at like, and after the first week of alpha, being like, oh, this is actually, I kind of prefer playing on retail. That sucks a little.
Okay, there's some very different perspectives, and I'm glad that contrast just got shown. So where you lie might be one extreme or the other, maybe further on either side of the spectrum, or somewhere in between. So make sure you're having your voice heard. You can go over to the forums and put those in, or you can just jump into the Faz Discord at bit.ly/FazDiscord. But until next time, may all your hits be crits.